Greetings, dear ones. I am. Kryon of magnetic service. It's the voice you've been hearing all along. It's the human being you've been hearing all along. Some will say it has come too quickly. A human being should not be able to make the jump to the other side of the veil this fast. You don't know. The new energy promotes a system that you don't know. It is not like the old days, I will tell you. This is a creator who wants to be found. That is to say, when you take the hand of the higher self, it does not let go. I live with this man, and he knows it. The higher self is even part of the Kryon. That is difficult to explain, and so is yours, dear human being. There are those here who say it's not real. There are those here who sit in the chair say this is the man speaking. This is the one who is pretending to channel. So let's get to it. In this space, I am creating energy with your allowance that is going to fill the space between your chairs with the soup of energy, which is the love of God. And I'm inviting into this place right now, with your permission, all of those in the group that is you, those you have loved and lost, those before you were born that you think you don't know are here. And in just a few minutes, the energy is going to shift in this place, and then I'll ask you if it's real. And you'll know that this is the voice from the other side of the veil, linearized for you through the man who sits in the chair. And it's all done through the process of what we call love for humanity. It is all done so that you will hear things you should hear, in order to help you move through these things, dear family, which you call humanity. There are those here who say, who would authorize such a thing called channeling? It is not sacred. They'll say it is not the way God talks to humanity, and I will tell you, it is the way God talks to humanity. It always has been. Again, I will say what I have said many times before. Again, I will say this to you, that all the scriptures on the planet, no matter who wrote them, have all been written by humans, all of them. God did not write anything. Humans wrote everything. The most sacred scriptures you can imagine, the ones that are revered by billions on the planet, written by human beings under the influence of spirit, and that's called channeling. And now you see it live, and therefore it may not have the profundity that it does when you see it in history, or when you read the words that were given thousands of years ago from the prophets and the apostles and the disciples. Well, let me tell you something, maybe it will in 100 years, 200 years. And you get to see it live. We do this all the time. Part of the energy shift on this planet is that this is becoming more common. But it is still sacred. For it is the core sacredness of you that we speak of. If you have been in the presence of Kryon before, oh, by the way, the room is starting to adjust. Some of you just felt that one. Do you know who it is sitting next to you yet? Some of you do. Because you've allowed it. Some of you do. Oh, humans. Oh, if you had the grand picture. I know who you are. I know your name when you're not here. This is such a small part of us. This human experience, such a small part of who we are. You and I. I'll speak to your higher self, you and I. Watch the earth be created. You and I have been on other earths before. You've heard words in other languages before. You've been other shapes before. This is not new to you, dear one. But you don't remember. You're not supposed to remember. But inside, there is a knowing. There's an intuitive knowing that you are an old soul and that I'm right. Let me take you for a moment to the potential of your last breath, dear human being. And what will you think then? Your last breath, you see, there is not one in here who is new. Not one. All of you have been here before. I'm speaking to a choir of old souls. Everyone, even the unbelievers. What happens at your last breath? I'll tell you. When you give up the ghost, as they say, and that human part of you starts to dissolve and give itself back to the dirt, as they say, the collection that you used to be before you got here starts to come together. In 3 earth days it will be complete. A trip to the cave of creation occurs where you give up the crystalline. And all that you ever were and everything you learned becomes a ring, seemingly on a crystal, like the ring of a tree that tells the crystal who you were. It becomes part of the earth. It never leaves the earth. And everything you learned and everything you did stays here. And then you join me. We have a celebration. You start to hear the music again. I've spoken of this. Each one of you knows of what I speak. The music is always playing on the other side of the veil. On my side, even when I'm here speaking to you, it plays to me. I call it music for you. I've linearized an energy which is always around me, which is the composite of God. It is beautiful. It is what some of you get in a sleep state, is what makes you breathe easier. That's what makes you feel loved. The room starts to heat up even more than it should, because there's more here than there was a few moments ago. Oh, the message is not necessarily that profound today. I'll do something I don't always do. We'll talk about current events. I don't always do that. But some like that, and so that is why I've told my partner to transcribe it. Depending upon the energy here, will depend upon whether or not the equipment works today. Sometimes it simply stops. It simply stops because the circuitry cannot take the profundity of the love of God. Hasn't been designed that way yet. And here we are in a circle. A continuous circle. When I see you, I see all of your lives together and the potentials of your own futures. I see those who started humanity. There's a shaman in the room who's just awakening, who is starting to see his shamanic energy. And it's taken a long time. He knows who he is. There are other old souls in this room who have no concept of what is in the rings of their crystal. I'll speak of that in a moment. In fact, I'm going to give you 6 energies, and that will be the last one. Number 1, let us speak of current events. Something is happening right now you should know about. Current events, very, very current, right below your feet. Oh, not right below, but to me it's instantly below, is the magma of the earth, the core of the earth. That is to say, the center, which is molten, is slowing down. If you look in the right places, you'll see this in your news. It's slowing down. This is creating the lessening of the magnetic grid. That is to say, it is starting to decrease in its gas. It is measurable. Scientists can measure it. It is happening right now. It is part of the shift that we speak of. It is part of the new year, 2008. We told you it was coming, and here we are in the 7th month. Number 7 is a sacred number. You know that, don't you? And if you've done your numerology and you've looked in what we have said, you would expect it now, and here it is. It is a continuation in the physical properties of the planet that we told you would exist. It is appropriate. Do not fear it. There are those who say you're headed for a magnetic flip. Indeed, you are. The potential is that it will not be in your lifetime, but eventually it will take place. If you expect it, there will be no chaos. In the past, it has hovered at a zero energy for hundreds of years before the flip. It will not this time. But the chances are it will not be in your lifetime. It responds to your consciousness. The very reason the magnetic grid is growing less is so that the distance between you and the veil will be minimized. This is a way of saying that the communications to your cellular self, that is your DNA, your memory itself, your crystalline, is becoming grander and greater because the veil is becoming limited. All of this to say the tools are growing. It's got to be this way. You're headed for a vibration of the planet like it's never seen before. You're headed for a 2012 experience, the beginning of the planting of the seeds for a vibrational increase in the planet. It is not an accident that you're going to be here, dear human being. There are those who have said, well, what do we do about it? And the answer is, you are it. Just be. Continue the work you're doing. It is not an indictment for you to change. It is not fearful information that the earth is going into a higher vibrational rate. If I had any advice at all for you, I would say to you, let your children go. Let them be what they are. Watch what they think and design your teachings around what they want and not what you want. And you'll be better off for it. I'll give you advice all the way through these current events. I always do. That was number 1. The magnetics are changing. Even today, right now, couldn't be more current. Perhaps you'll even read about it. Happening as you sit here. Not in the future. Right now. Next month, a grand experiment takes place. The largest machine on earth comes online studying the smallest things that exist. Things that are invisible. And we speak now of the atomic accelerator in Switzerland. Current events. There are many who've said, this is dangerous. It is not. No more energy will be studied there than is present in the barrage of cosmic energy that hits the earth every moment of every second. All they are doing is creating the energy in a controlled way so that they can study it, because they cannot study it when it's random. They use matter and antimatter. They use protons and antiprotons. And they speed them up to 90% or more than the speed of light and crash them into each other. And the biggest experiment that's ever been. Let me tell you what the potentials are. And remember, you heard it here first. What they're looking for is interdimensional energy, and they will find it. Because they're looking. What they're looking for is what they'll get. And let me tell you the profundity of what they're about to discover within this next decade. They will rewrite the scenario of how the universe started. The Big Bang never was. It is a three-dimensional explanation of an interdimensional attribute. Universes are created all of the time through interdimensional shift. And when one dimension literally collides with another, you get all of the attributes that you describe as the Big Bang. In 3D, you had many scientists prove what they felt was the Big Bang theory's attribute that showed it truly existed. They found the residual of what they thought was proof. Names like Hubble and others. And here's what we're going to tell you, that if you're going to think in 3D, that's what you're going to get. But even the Big Bang Theory had to be interdimensional at its beginning. For everything traveled faster than light. Everything happened all at once. Today, that would have been the attribute of a quantum event. And that's what this laboratory will discover. For you're about to see the residual of an interdimensional collision. It's everywhere. Once you can start to see the dimensions that are invisible, or at least see the attributes that they trace in the explosions that they're going to see, it'll be obvious. All of this to say to you in this cryptic way that this particular experiment is safe, this particular experiment is a long term, and you're actually going to see interdimensionality at its best. That was number 2. I'm going to rewind time for a moment. I want to go back 10 years. Because I sat in front of you then and I gave you information about your energy crisis. And now you're in it. So I will now explain yet again some things that you can do about it. I'm going to give you the same information I gave you before. For those need to hear it now, who did not hear it before, and see it now, who did not see it before. This particular message has the potential of hitting the ears of someone who you would say in 3D is abundant. That is to say, they can make things happen because they have the purse strings to do so. You would call it deep pockets. And so I challenge the one that hears this with deep pockets. For this will only make you more abundant. There are 2 energy sources on this planet which have always been there, which are free. Free. And the technology to claim them has been developed. And they are free. Listen. Number 1. You wonder why the moon is there, don't you? Kryon, why do we have a moon? I'll tell you why you have a moon. So that you can power your cities. And no one has ever thought of it. The moon gives you motion of water on a timetable that has never changed for centuries. It gives you hundreds of thousands of tons of push-pull energy for free. Always there, where most of your large cities are. The waves and the tides provide the power for Earth. It'll provide the power for every single city you can build from now till the day the Earth is no longer. There is no limit to the amount of electricity that you can provide yourselves, even to the degree of plugging in your cars. And it's free. And it's free. All you have to do is to build the apparatus that will contain it. And you have it. You know how to create push-pull energy, whether it be a paddle wheel or a float. All of this has been designed. There are 3 cities currently on the earth that derive most of their power from tides. And they're in the north, and they're not in this country. They already have the technology to power your cities, if you allow it to be. And it's free. And you don't have to burn any oil for it. And you don't have to burn any coal for it. And you don't have to take anything from Gaia for it. Let Gaia push and pull its way to a freedom from the sources that you have now. And we say it yet again. It is here. It always has been. It's not going away. The second one, a little harder, but just as obvious. You have many ways of creating power. One of the most complex and difficult to understand and build is the nuclear power plant. And all you have done when you've finished is to create a steam engine. For all it does is create heat. For you then to create steam. For you then to create a generator which moves to create electricity. It is therefore a glorified steam engine. There is another glorified steam engine called the magma of Earth. Everywhere you drill, it gets hot the further you go down. Did you think about that? If you want heat, all you have to do is drill for it. Now, this is difficult because you have to go down a long way. It becomes more difficult because there are byproducts that are involved. The technology must be developed to create this heat, to tap the heat, to make a steam engine that's forever. Forever. Start by building them in the hot spots. The hot spots are defined as those places on the earth where the magma is closer to the surface. How about starting at the Pacific Rim, for instance, where all the volcanoes are, for instance, and where many of your largest cities are, for instance. And you will find all the power you need to create steam is right below your feet. Is it worth it to invest in this? That's up to you. How much longer do you wish to extract pieces and parts of the earth, burn them up and put them in the atmosphere? And what is that worth to you? And so we say it as clear as we've ever said it to you. From the other side of the veil is that the power has always existed. It's existed for you to create electricity, to power your cities, to power your vehicles, and it has always been free. No byproducts at all. And that was number 3. Number 4, we have some advice about the weather. It's not going to get better. And if you sit and wish for it, that is not going to make it better. We have explained it before, we'll say it again. You're in a water cycle that is profoundly set to create a mini ice age. And it may seem odd to you that it gets hot before it has to get cold. If you will look into your geology records, you'll find the exact same thing. You didn't have the records you had then in the 1400s, and it happened then. And you survived it then. So we say to you, the winds will return. And our advice is to prepare for this by creating a situation where you acclimate to the new weather. You may build differently. You may build in different places. But the admonishment is this: don't be surprised when it returns. It will return. Don't be surprised when the levees break again south of you, because they will. You'd be much better off to move the dirt around and build on higher ground. And that is smart. We'll see if it happens. What are you saying, Kryon? I am saying that human beings can adapt, and they have in the past, and you can now. If you start thinking smarter, you adapt for the weather changes. Take charge of how you affect it, not how it affects you. That was number 4. Number 5 and number 6 are a lot more esoteric. And that's why you came, isn't it? Number 5, the energy of this planet is shifting. It is shifting greatly, just like we said it would. Humans are thinking in a different fashion. Many of them are starting to have understandings and epiphanies, even about science, new thought about how things work. We told you they would. Those who will never be esoteric are giving you esoteric information, and they're calling it science. Discoveries are being made that will lead to interdimensional thought. Science is being rewritten as to what is real and what is not. And all of this is in line with what we told you were the potentials of this planet. Now, how does that reflect into current events? You're on the cusp of something, and I will tell you what it is. Dear humanity, you can have peace on earth. And there will be gyrations that you will go through in the process of learning what you want and what you don't want. But in this year, and especially next, in 2009, there are some potentials for you to watch for. Remember, you heard it here first. It's an 11 year. 11 numerologically has many kinds of meanings. What it means to you in old numerology doesn't matter. What it means, however, is that 11 is the number of this age. We told you that when we showed up. In 1989, I gave you in the first transmission, in the first book, the meanings of 11. And here you are coming up to an 11 year yet again. Only this one is right before. The only 11 you're going to get before 2012. That ought to be significant. It's the only 11 with this energy. That ought to be significant. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Watch for the young people of this planet to make differences in this next year. Differences you don't expect. And one of the biggest is the overthrow of dictators. This is the potential that the chest-pounding dictators of this earth are on their way out, and they will not be replaced by other dictators. The beginning of a shift of consciousness of what leadership means to government, of what ordinary human beings are going to expect from their leadership. In an old energy, there was an expectation of government in many lands that you simply tolerated. And without it, there would be chaos. So whichever landed in your land was acceptable. That is an old energy concept, for it led to those who would be in control without integrity. That's going to shift. It's going to shift in your own land as well. For human beings are going to start to expect leadership with integrity. That is new. Watch for it. 2009, there is a potential for a major shift in a country which I'm not going to mention. And it's going to be caused by the young people of the country. Those who you would never feel would even care are going to rise up and make a difference. Watch for it And when you see it, don't look at the news and say, this is bad. Don't look at the news and say, oh, look at those who died. Don't look at the news and see it that way. I want to tell you, there are those who have come to this planet just so they can be part of that. There are those that come to the planet just so they can be part of it and come home and come back and do something even greater. I want to tell you, the overview of this is far grander than you think. Congratulate those who have decided to pass on for this reason, for they've made a shift that is heroic. And look at what they do for their own country. For there will be some of that as well, potentially. That is what we see. The whole planet is involved in this one. It really will change the future, you know. Finally, number 6. Personal potential. And we'll make this one short, although there'll come a time when it is not short. Your DNA is changing. It is changing because of the magnetic influences that are beginning to change around it. This is what we spoke of when we first came here. I call myself the magnetic master. That is a three-dimensional linear term to get your attention to what's going on. My group moved the magnetic grid because you allowed for it. You don't understand what human consciousness does. Human consciousness is a demand, an instruction set for those forces which are esoteric around this planet to move physical things from the consciousness that develops from your thought. It's backwards than what you think. There are those on the earth wondering what God is doing, never understanding it's what they're doing. The personal potential is going to rise very significantly. Potential. Nothing happens to you unless you ask for it. The ability to rewrite DNA, the ability to change your attributes that you came in with, you thinking above the cellular level, being able to claim pieces and parts of the Akash. That means that which you were, which is part of your own crystalline crystal in the cave of creation, can be mined. That means that you can go back and pick up the best parts of you. And it's about time, for that is what we see. We see you as an entire human string. That is the core higher self of all the lifetimes you've ever lived. That's what we see when we see you. We don't see your life now. We see the old soul. We see who you've been, what you've learned. We know how full the spiritual jar is based upon all of the things that you have ever studied in all the lifetimes you've ever had. That's what's in your DNA. And that's what's accessible. Very accessible. When you start pushing on the door, don't be surprised if the door pushes back a little. To some it's scary. It's part of the new way. A cooperation with God that even shouts that you're part of the system. Oh, human being, you're not just the human being looking to God for something. You are part of God. You are my partner in this. You always have been. That has been the message of Kryon. That is the message of Kryon today. More profound it becomes, more profound it is. And we're about ready to leave. But not before we remind you of who sits next to you. There are those listening to this message that are not in your time frame. If you'll allow me for a moment to speak to them. You sit there and you're listening, some of you, most of you, alone, to this message. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this happened in the past. Isn't it sweet? Isn't it nice? I think I'll write some of these things down. You're thinking to yourself, well, I want to tell you something. You're involved right now. For in the very aspect of you having the intent to listen to this, you have created an energy that allows you to be surrounded by those you've loved and lost. by those in other lifetimes that continue to surround you as what you call your guides. There is a lot going on right now around you, listener. You are not just tuning into something that happened in the past. And I'm talking to you personally. You know who I'm talking to. And you ought to feel it right now. Because I know the potential that you're listening. And you are. Such is the way quantumness works. That we have the ability to see things out of time. But the potential existed for you to listen, and you are. And I will tell you, it is no accident that you're here with your ears. Any more than it's an accident that there are those here in this time frame with their bodies to sit in the chairs. It's a stretch, isn't it? Human being to become interdimensional. But some of you are learning very well. It is the love of God that surrounds you right now. If that's what you're feeling. All of you. Those in this time frame, those in the others. You see, the Creator wants to be found. And that's what you are learning in this age. There's a cooperation. There's a partnership. Not worship. Because we're family. Dear human. And so it is that we say that there has been a dispensation, even right now, of allowance for belief that such things could even begin to be real. And they are. Especially the one that says, I've been washing your feet, because some of you have felt it. These words are sacred. They have the same energy that all of the other scriptures did. They may not be written in the same way. They may not reach the same masses that they did. But you heard them. And they went into you. So that today you could feel the love of God. And recognize home. So be it. And so it is.